una cartica que yo guardo donde te escribí, que te sueñe que te quiero tanto, que hace rato está mi corazón latiendo por ti, latiendo por ti.
Strangers, who are you? Where do you sail from? Are you traders, or do you sail the sea as pirates, with your hands against every man, and every man's hand against you? These lines come from Homer's Odyssey, one of the earliest existing texts. Piracy, one of the world's oldest professions, has been around even longer than the blind poet, and also shares a birthplace with him, the Mediterranean. Since the late Bronze Age, this area has been a hotbed for piratical activity. In fact, the word pirate comes from the ancient Greek word piero, which means to make an attempt. According to an Egyptian clay tablet from the period, the people of the eastern Mediterranean were attacking ships as early as the 14th century BCE, and it is not a big surprise given the geography of the area. Greece is one of the most mountainous countries in Europe, with a rugged terrain unsuitable for farming. Hence, civilization sprang up only in flat pockets near the shore, where the mountain ranges tapered off. But even in these flatter areas, the rocky soil was of too poor quality to be hospitable to crops. Villages, by necessity, had to be small and humble. They could not grow large and prosperous because there was not enough arable land to grow food to feed a large village. Since the ancients could not grow enough food to be profitable, they were forced to take up fishing as a way to make a living. In the water beyond their shores, food such as fish, squid, octopus, and shellfish flourished. An average, able-bodied man would have had access to a boat for fishing. For him to be successful, he also needed navigation and sailing skills. Sailing in the ancient world bore little relation to the sailboats and speedboats enjoyed by sailors today. Without the modern invention of GPS, sonar, power engines, and the National Weather Service, sailors had to be conscious every moment of the water depth, the weather conditions, and their position in the sea in order to avoid running aground, capsizing, or becoming lost. These skills, learned by necessity for fishing purposes, came in handy for the men and women who eventually turned to piracy. The scarcity of good soil and natural resources naturally led to trade. Since it was virtually impossible to cross over any of the Greek mountains in those days, and moving stuff by sea is always easier anyway, the sea turned into the Greek highway system as the best and most efficient way to get around and conduct trade. One city-state would specialize in a particular good or crop and ship it to other city-states, selling their product and purchasing the products of other city-states. Over time, the best routes to navigate from city-state to city-state became well-known and well-used, and irresistible to pirates. In fact, the very geography of the sea itself helped to foster piracy. The Mediterranean basin is essentially an obstacle course of small islands. Large trade ships were forced to sail in very narrow lanes between the islands and the shore in order to avoid shipwrecks. Before the advent of the steam engine, sailors were at the mercy of the currents and tides and unable to deviate from the courses nature charted. Ships could not sail in the winter or during rough weather. All these factors combined meant that large trade ships were likely to pass through only certain small areas and only under certain weather conditions. They were sitting ducks for the pirates, who had only to lie in wait among the many islands along the coast for a big ship to pass by. Beyond the physical geography, political reasons helped piracy take off. The small, isolated villages that grew out of the landscape created independent settlements that were not easily governed by a single body. Greece was not one unified country as it is today, but rather a collection of loosely connected groups who had their own governments, identities, and ways of life. These city-states were allied in name, but were often rivals in practice. Hostilities between city-states were not uncommon. Piracy easily sprang up between the city-states because it did not seem like stealing from one's own country. Capturing a merchant ship from another city-state was fair game in an area of scarce resources. With all these factors in its favor, piracy was considered part of the rhythm of life during the Late Bronze Age. Despite its happening all